Now, the second aspect of Trump is he seems to have gone a little bit mad, and I'm not against Donald Trump, but he seems to have gone a little bit mad in what he thinks he can achieve, and whether this is him being serious or not is very difficult to tell. Hello and welcome to Future Marketing UK. Thanks so much for joining me. The point of this channel is to give you the heads up to anything major coming your way that's going to affect primarily your business. It might affect you personally, but it's going to affect your business. And so please subscribe and like this video if you find it useful, so you don't miss out future episodes which are coming out every week. So today I want to talk about Trump. He's going to be getting the reins of power in just 4 days' time on Monday the 20th. It's going to really impact your business, but not in the way that you think. And I'm going to spend the rest of this episode really talking about what to expect, if you can prepare for it, and how to mitigate against any of the issues that he may cause. But it's really to give you the heads up. Now, as ever, I'm not expecting you to commit any money to this. I don't expect you to really believe me necessarily. But I want you to be at least aware of the situations, so you don't have to end up running around like a headless chicken. So let's start with the basics. What does Trump really mean? Well, Trump is, as we all know, a narcissist, and he's very egotistic and always likes to be seen the winner. What could possibly go wrong? Well, the world is a very complicated place at the moment. And it's very difficult, indeed almost impossible, to predict what other nations and other people's reactions are to his various thoughts, deeds and actions. So let's start off with the economic ones. He has already promised to impose tariffs, particularly hard on countries he doesn't really like, and even some tariffs on countries he doesn't mind but doesn't get on with. So we're going to start with some of the things he's actually said. So from day one he said he's going to put tariffs, 60% tariffs on Chinese imports into America. And he's going to put 20% tariffs from Europe going into America, and either the same or higher for tariffs for imports coming in from Mexico or Canada into America. Now, I don't know how much of this is bluster, but if he follows it up, even if he follows it up with only half the amount, say 10% import tariffs, that's going to have a fairly major effect on the global economy. And don't forget, the UK is being a trading nation is particularly sensitive to what is going on to the rest of the world. If the rest of the world goes into recession, then so do we. We're not insulated from it. We are very much linked to the world system. Particularly the Western Hemisphere. So it really can impact us, in even if it doesn't directly impact us, the effect can come around the back door and affect us nonetheless. So these tariffs will obviously increase costs to American consumers, and this will have an effect on increasing inflation in America. It will also reduce demand to some extent of exports from these various countries, whether it's China, Europe, Canada and Mexico, for the goods that America really can't duplicate for whatever reason. Then they'll be forced to keep buying them at the elevated price, and this is what's going to cause inflation. And for the goods that the manufacturer of can progress relatively quickly into America, or the goods that actually American customers find they can do without, then obviously that's going to negatively affect the exporting countries. In other words, between the two, everyone's a loser. Okay, America doesn't win in this scenario because it's got higher inflation, higher interest rates, and part of the problem, and I'll get onto this in a minute, is with higher interest rates, so the servicing of America's debt becomes more expensive. And as we've all seen in the news recently, the markets can take control and actually boost the amount of interest rates that investors demand, increasing them beyond the official interest rate set by the bank. So, I focused on the UK. The actual tariff situation could actually benefit us in a number of ways. Trump is probably quite unlikely to apply tariffs to the UK. Part of this is because he actually quite likes the UK and he has lots of business interests in the UK. And his mother was born in the Outer Hebrides. And he's got a soft spot for the UK. Now, we can't rely on the soft spot scenario to save us from tariffs exporting to America. However, the trading setup between the US and the UK is actually very different to that of the rest of Europe and indeed to the rest of the world. See, we are also fairly big importers of goods from America, and our physical trade balance is about the same. So in other words, we buy roughly the same amount of stuff, goods from America as they do from us. Where we dominate the situation is we sell roughly twice as many services to America as they sell to us. Now you're thinking, what on earth do we sell that America wants to buy? Because we're big users of some of the sort of software platforms like Google and Facebook and other things that must rake in a lot of money flowing towards America from us. But it's our financial services. Despite America having a huge financial industry of its own, it actually is very dependent on our financial services too. And it's the financial services that really cause this a trade surplus from our point of view going over to America. Now, import tariffs don't affect services, so that unfortunately America has to sort of live with it, and you could argue that they need our financial services anyway. So there's no great incentive for America to impose tariffs on us because we would probably reciprocate with an equal tariff on exports, a tariff on imports from America to us. And again, Donald Trump can see that we'd both lose out in that scenario. But actually, he would be the biggest loser because a lot of stuff we buy from America is fairly discretionary, and we're more price sensitive as well. So the trade flow towards Britain would actually fall a lot quicker than our trade flow from from the UK to America. So we would actually narrow our overall trade deficit, which is good for us, and America would be the loser. So there's good thinking there that won't happen. Certainly not immediately, not unless the UK does something to really tick off Donald Trump. What this means is that in a scenario where he is charging a tariff, whether it's 10 or 20 or even 60% of goods flowing from other countries in the world, and the UK doesn't have that, then what we might find is a slight uptick of inward business investment of businesses elsewhere in the world, setting up shop, building their factories, or just simply acquiring factories in the UK in order to sell the same stuff as they sell, but to the UK free of import tariffs. Now, so boosting inward investment is a good thing. That helps to sort of prop up the value of the pound, which has been hard hit this week. It's gone down about 2%. And that, of course, drives inflation for us. So we don't really want to see the pound dropping suddenly. That's bad for the overall economy. Maybe good for exporters in the short term. But then, of course, importing raw materials for those to make those exports goes up. And so really, it swings and roundabouts. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how the tariff situation shapes out. How much people around the world want to, inwardly invest in the UK. Don't forget, Donald Trump's term is 4 years. If it's a quick operation that you can move over to the UK, then a lot of business people are going to be thinking, yes, it's worth doing because you've got 4 years of this, not just 1 or 2. But obviously, to move big operations across, like building automobile factories, well, the factories itself will take about 4 years to build, and so by the time you got it online, the tariff situation may have changed. So you're a UK business, you're thinking, okay, well, I can deal with that. Andre's telling me that really there's, from a tariff point of view, I might be able to get away with no extra pain. It could be that I might benefit. It may be that foreign buyers want to acquire my company, want to buy my company, so maybe overall it's good for me. So far, so good. Now, there is another sort of catch-22, and this is the sort of the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about, is the the government debt market's in a very precarious position. One of the reasons why the pound has gone down about 2 cents against the dollar is partly because of Labour's insistence to balance the books, which is actually the right thing to do. But it's a global testament to investors worrying about whether governments running up big national debts are ever going to be in a position to actually pay off the debts or even service the debts. And so an example of that is the interest rate that investors pay to lend money to the UK government, say a 10-year bond. So this is a 10-year loan from somebody else, like a pension fund, to the UK government. Normally hovers a little bit below or around the sort of expected base rate over that 10-year period. So say sort of 3 or 4%. Well, it's gone up a lot in the last few weeks. I can't remember exactly the figure, and the figure varies every sort of day. But now in public, private investors are wanting sort of 8% or 7 or 8% on their yield per year for a 10-year bond. So this is obviously made borrowing by the government. If the government wants to borrow money, it's having to pay now substantially more than it was even a few weeks ago. Now this isn't isolated to the UK. This could spread very contagiously to other countries in the world if investors generally get the jitters that governments won't be able to pay back the loans. Okay. Now, in theory, a government can never fail to pay back a loan. If it has to, it could just print more money endlessly and infinitely to pay off the investor. So we're not actually talking about governments being able to pay back a loan, but obviously printing a lot of money incessantly or infinitely will have a direct effect on what the value of that bond is worth. So if the currency is halved in value, then in numerical terms, governments will always be able to pay that investor off. But the actual value of that bond could have decreased by half or by 2/5 or whatever. And clearly investors are worried about the absolute value of their investments and not just the material interest rate that they're getting. So there's a real issue, there's a real problem in this year, 2025, that the debt markets might really crumble and have to put up much higher interest rates than the base rates, which suggests this really directly impacts anyone with a mortgage, not a tracker mortgage, because a tracker mortgage tracks the base rate, but just mortgages in general. The variable rate, or next time you change your fixed rate, may go up rather than down. And clearly if this is happening on a major scale, to many countries, indebted countries in the world, then you'll find that generally customers, not just customers in the UK, but customers elsewhere will have progressively less money to spend, and therefore if your ultimate consumer is the domestic customer, then you're going to be hard hit in the medium to the long term future. So this is not good. And even in sort of tertiary businesses where you're not selling to the end consumer, if you're selling to other businesses, then you've got to look at who are they selling to, and if they're selling to the end consumer, then that's also leads to a drop in sales. And this also would affect corporate loans. And so if you're relying on a loan, or if you're just about to sort of take out a loan to extend or to expand your business, then this interest rate might also be going up rather than down. It maybe not for the first time, but rarely would it diverge completely from the actual base rate. So you might find the rather bizarre situation happening this year, where the UK base rate continues to go down, but the interest rate that you'd pay on any kind of mortgage or corporate loan is actually going to go up, because that is what investors are demanding. So that's going to be an unpleasant surprise if that happens, and it's looking as if it will happen, but as to what extent actually then relies on the second aspect of Trump. Now, the second aspect of Trump is he seems to have gone a little bit mad, and I'm not against Donald Trump, but he seems to have gone a little bit mad in what he thinks he can achieve. And whether this is him being serious or not is very difficult to tell, but in this last week, and indeed over the last 5 years, he's shown a great interest in acquiring Greenland, and now he's talking about acquiring Panama. Now, I don't see how military action between two NATO countries can occur without NATO being thoroughly destroyed. I mean, I don't mean physically destroyed, but the concept of NATO surely would crumble if two NATO partners were to go to war with each other. And even if that doesn't happen, if Donald Trump uses economic coercion to try to gain these countries either through blockades or tariffs or any other kind of big stick, then he is going to worry just about everyone in Europe, or all the European governments, that he's not going to really be there if the war in Ukraine sort of expands or gets out of control. So what this what this might entail, what this might lead to, is the European governments begrudgingly have to spend more on their defence, okay? Because they either get the feeling that America won't be there if they need it, or if indeed they are going to war with America, they need to spend a lot more to actually come up with a credible opposition to any military plans. And this could happen quite swiftly, quite suddenly, where the UK government and other European governments have to say double their spending on the military. Now, actually, I would be supportive of this. For too long, Europe has been far too reliant on America's massive military spend to prop them up. And I think this is both unfair and not particularly sustainable. So Europe will be forced to spend more on defence. Now, like the UK, most European countries either have the feeling that they can't really borrow from the debt markets anymore because of the subject I've just discussed, or their constitution, in the case of Germany, or their electoral promises to balance the books, forces them to increase taxes even more. Okay, to pay for this extra military spending, which in some cases could be 1 or 2% of GDP, they would have to raise taxes even more. And the argument there is, well, where do you place the tax? Who's going to pay this time round? In the UK, the businesses were very hard hit, and most of those don't really kick in until April. But does the government, when looking to raise 1 or 2% of GDP from taxes, where do they put that pressure on? Could they do it again on businesses? If they do, then to be honest, that's going to be painful for any UK business. And if they apply taxes to the rich, then there's a danger that if they apply too much taxes to the rich, then the rich might go off elsewhere. Or if they tax the typical man on the street, then that's going to have a direct hit on consumer spending and poverty indexes and everything else, and that's going to be a negative for businesses, particularly in the UK as well. Now, if you're an exporter, then you're going to be thinking, I'm going to be all right. But this is going to apply to so many European countries that, and they're going to have to square the circle somehow. And in every situation that I can see, it is going to be taking money away, again, a good thing, but unfortunate, taking money away from consumers and businesses, meaning that, again, it's more pressure on your sales at a time when your costs could be going up. So generally, not a good situation for most businesses. Now, before you jump out your window and thinking, oh my God, this is 2025 is going to be dismal, there is a little prospect of something a bit more exciting happening. Now, you might remember if you watched my first episode that I'm very much a believer that people from out of town, i.e. aliens, are currently flying around in their hundreds through the atmosphere of the Earth, and in particular paying close attention to military bases and anything to do with nuclear technology. Now, although the UK government has tried to keep this very secret, and the media in this country is only too loyal to the government, it is quite apparent that what's been happening over in America in terms of UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, have been busy observing what we're doing in our nuclear sites in this country too. So hovering over Aldermaston, Burfield, the Portsmouth nuclear shipyard, Plymouth, and of course, as for the last sort of 8 weeks, the American Air Force bases in the UK. Now, these alien aircraft are obviously hugely advanced to ours. We have no reasonable way to stop them doing what they're doing, which is basically learning, scanning, investigating, in a very kind of military way, the sort of thing you'd do before a war. Now, I'm not saying for a minute there's going to be a war between aliens, but their conduct and activities over the years, and in particular the last couple of months, is concerning. And so, for that reason, Donald Trump is possibly going to announce what these UAPs are on day 2 of his office. So this is actually the Tuesday the 21st. He may make an announcement to what these UAPs are. Now, he might be truthful and say, well, they're alien aircraft flying around, or he might try to cover them up, saying, well, this is just, we don't know what they are, but we're going to carry on investigating. But in the background, okay, the government might not want to tell us, the public, but in the background, they are concerned that these UAPs are flying around our airspace with complete impunity, and there's nothing they can do. That none of these sort of anti-drone technology or even their F-16s can chase them. These things can travel quite literally at the speed of light, so they can disappear and reappear. And they usually take a form of a glowing red orb, sort of orangey light that would drift or hang around their area of interest for maybe many, many hours, and then just disappear the same way as they appeared. And these UAPs, without going into too much detail, are a concern to the militaries, both in America and the UK. And so the defence spending that I was talking about may partly be related to that. In other words, they want to find out how to prevent these aliens from doing what they're doing, which is very worrying. Now, not many of you know this, but the UFO, what kicked all this off was the UFO that crashed in Roswell. For many, many years, it wasn't very clear to why did it crash, and if these aliens are so good, why have they got a dodgy UFO that crashes? Well, it turns out that there was an EMP test down the nuclear range, pretty near the Roswell site, and this has only sort of come out in the last few months. But during the nuclear testing on our part, we sent off this massive EMP, an electromagnetic blast or pulse, which totally fried the electronics of this UFO, which caused it to crash in Roswell, and that's really where the story began. And sadly, after sort of 70 or 80 years of reverse engineering, we're no closer to really be able to replicate these alien craft. And so we don't really have the technology to defeat them. This is where a public expenditure of money is required to try to close the gap between technology, which is very likely to be thousands of years ahead of us, in some way, so we can at least prevent these UAPs from finding more. They have the capability, by the way, to turn off and turn on nuclear warheads which are buried underground. So that is obviously a concern that they've already acquired. That technology. And so, but whether Donald Trump announces this on Tuesday the 21st is up in the air. He might chicken out. He might just say, actually, these are just swamp gas or balloons, whatever. But he might be honest. It's very difficult to tell. He might just say that the alien aircraft and we're looking into it and nothing to worry about. The fact is there is things to worry about because we don't know that they're not a threat. And the peaceful person amongst us would say, well, they've been around for 70 years. If they could have attacked us, they would have done, and that's kind of where I sit. That's kind of the logic there. They could have attacked us years ago. But on the other hand, as we get more sophisticated, the more of a threat to them, they might decide to sort of nip that threat in the bud. Depends on, it's difficult because aliens don't think like humans. So it's actually really difficult to know what that is. But the effect to your business is if alien tech flying around the world is announced, then you can expect a very big public conversation to occur about where these aliens from, what is the threat they pose, how can we boost up technology to at least match their technical abilities. Bear in mind we've had access to their craft for 70, 80 years, and we haven't really made any major inroads. We do understand how they work, but it's actually trying to replicate that is the difficult bit. It's a kind of think of it as a material science challenge, as opposed to it's not a physics challenge. We know exactly how they work, but and that's the warping of space and time. Each UFO is basically a bundle of distorted space-time, and actually the red glow that you get from orbs is actually coming from blue-shifted infrared radiation. So these, in their reality, in their little bubble, their space-distorting craft are actually quite hot, but because of the effect of space-time distortion, that is blue-shifted to a wavelength that we can see and perceive as sort of a reddy orange light. So this is going to be possibly a boon if your business is in any way connected to advanced material sciences, or you supply science institutions. If you're in any way connected with avionics or aerospace in general, you might find that there's a sudden uptick on research and development, maybe paid for by the governments or paid for by private industries. There's obviously commercial aspects to this. So from a commercial point of view, if you know something can fly with no obvious propulsion and no obvious emissions of CO2, you may be inclined to look into that as a future technology, so you can fly holiday makers from one part of the world to the other without producing any CO2, and rather than the flight taking 9 hours, you can do it in one. And so there could be commercial interest, but I think initially it would be driven very much by government spending on research and development about how to sort of boost our defences against these things. So lots to look forward to in 2025, all pretty much as a result of Trump. It has to be said that Biden at no point over the last few months has been tempted to increase tariffs, to increase inflation rates in the US, or indeed to disclose the alien technology presence in our atmosphere. So Trump represents all change on all those fronts. Overall, I think bad for business, bad for most businesses, possibly good for the UK. As I say, the tariffs probably won't be applied to us, and the potential for more inward investment could be positive. I wish our government, the Labour government, would spend more on defence for the reasons I've said before. We really do need to spend more defence. We used to be a very big defence spender in the Cold War, and that rightfully shrunk when the Cold War ended. But now the powers that be need to recognise that the status quo is changing once again, and they need to boost defence again. If you're a business that supplies the UK defence industry, this is very good news for you. That can be quite mundane things, like if you're supplying raw materials, or if you're supplying training courses. If the military budget is increased, so it will be increasing around all aspects of the forces, the army, the RAF, and everything else. It would be sort of a fairly comprehensive increase of spending and investment and capability, building factories to build weapons. So even if your business is supplying sort of logistics like factory building, you might benefit. So all this could kick off in the next week or two. As I say, don't run around like a headless chicken. You've heard it here first. And I really hope that taking this information, you can prepare yourself mentally for what's coming, and try to take advantage of any opportunity as they arise. Now, if you've enjoyed this conversation, if you enjoyed what I've been saying, then please like and subscribe. Do comment, do write in the comments if you want me to expand on anything that I've touched upon in the next episode. I'm more than happy to. The next episode I'm going to be talking about is climate change. Climate change has suddenly, it never really went away, but with the fires that have been going on in LA, it is quite apparent that in the right set of circumstances, something similar could happen here. I don't know when the last time you flew over the UK, but there's lots and lots of forests and woods, and actually many houses and businesses are surrounded by flammable material, if only that was bone dry. And I won't be focusing exclusively on fires, but we're going to be looking at the impact of climate change that could well happen this year on your business. Right, I shall leave it there. Thanks so much for watching, and as I say, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Thank you very much. Goodbye.